Hello friends, this is your friend back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto met Nell and built a legendary alliance with Yoruichi and Harribel? Episode 3. If you like this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Now, as Naruto grows stronger in this new world, ancient forces are beginning to awaken, and the fate of multiple realms may soon rest on his shoulders. Now, let's start. You have a visitor, sir. Oh. Urahara Kazuki looked up at the sound of Tessai's voice with a cheery smile. And who has come to visit this humble shopkeeper? 3 separate kids tore through the door while he was still speaking and struck all at once, slamming him into the nearest wall to hold him fast. Well, this was a problem. He hadn't even sensed the caster's spiritual pressure until the last moment, and they'd already snared him with a Raikujokuro, Seijo Sabaku, and Kuyo Shibari besides. Those were some high-level Bakudo spells. He was, in a word, quite stuck. Oh, wait. Those were 2 words. Semantics, he supposed. At length, the door slid open and he beheld Tessai's sprawled form on the floor mere moments before someone stepped over him and entered the room. They didn't even have the decency to close it behind them, not that he could blame them given their current state. My, but they looked livid. Dead eyes regarded him, cold and blank, their lips parted ever so slightly in distaste, long hair drawn back to reveal. The scar above her bosom. For this was undoubtedly a woman. Bugger, but he was in for it now, wasn't he? Urahara Kazuki. Her voice was soft as a whisper, near silken with menace. You have something I need. Unohana Retsu, otherwise known as Unohana Yakiru, did not smile, nor did she draw her blade. There was no need to. Her words were sharp enough, as was her past. He hadn't been around back then to witness it, no siree, but he'd heard the stories from Kiaraku and Yukataki. And what frightful stories they were. There were 3 entities he had no desire to fight: the head captain, anyone in Squad 0, and Unohana herself. Such a troublesome woman. My goodness. Despite his bindings, he plastered a sunny smile to his face in the slim hope that being cooperative would dissuade her from doing anything rash. I wasn't expecting such distinguished company. I should have brought out my tea-seat urk. Her hand closed around his throat and squeezed with bone-crushing force. He nearly choked to death on the spot. You enjoy theories, do you not, Urahara Kazuki? I have one for you. I'm certain I can crush your throat before you unleash your Bankai. She stared at him intently, the ghost of a smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. Shall we test that theory? Troublesome indeed. He liked it better when she was, Retsu. Who had gone and awoken her. There was nothing for it but to hear her out, until he made a plan. How might I be of service? I am seeking a certain hollow by the name of Uzumaki Naruto. Though the killer's gaze never once left his, she spat Naruto's name like it was a curse or worse. The next time that friend comes to Karakura town, you will tell me. This is not a request but a command. I have to kill him. He has to die. By my hand, and no others. Do you understand? Well, I'm afraid that might be rather difficult. Ouch. Mistakes were made, and they were his. You misunderstand. I can hardly open the gateway to Hawako Muendo at the moment. What you're asking for takes time. No, it is you who don't seem to understand. Her grip on his throat slackened just so, allowing him to breathe. I have no intention of venturing into that disgusting pit unless he provokes me further. He will come here, I am certain of it. And when he does, I will be ready. Kazuki tilted his head, grappling with his rising dread. What makes you say that? Those half-lidded eyes regarded him intently. He's rather interested in a certain pet project of yours, isn't he? His eyes widened. Kurosaki. Yes, that boy with the frightful potential. It would be such a shame if someone snuffed it out, don't you think? Here at last, Unohana Yakiru smiled, and it was a most terrifying thing indeed. If you fail to comply with my command, I will kill him and Kuchiki Rukia as well. I do not care about your pet project. Only vengeance. And you will deliver it to me. Crazy woman. He gulped. Might I ask what exactly you have against this hollow? Hana regarded him for a long, ponderous moment, weighing whether to tell him or not. In the end, she saw fit to humor him. He stole my dream. My purpose. He will repay me in blood. Her piece said. She vanished, taking her kiddo with her. Urahara slumped to the floor, idly massaging his throat. He could already feel the bruises forming therein. Yoruichi would be furious when saw them. He'd need to keep her off the warpath. He'd come within inches of death just now, and he didn't doubt for a moment that Retsu would honor her word. Yikes, he muttered under his breath. That is one scary woman. I can't tell if she wants to kill Uzumaki or kiss him. He paused, considering the matter further. Nope. Best not to think of it. Ignorance was bliss. Underscore. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. Underscore. Strong. That single thought dominated Harribel's thoughts as she crashed backward across the dunes, tumbling end over end as she struggled to right herself, to no avail. The moment she did, Uzumaki was on her again, a falling star hurtling down from the sky. His fist struck her blackened blade and sand sprayed upward in a roaring geyser in a towering plume of gritty gravel. Harribel flashed through it to gain an aerial advantage, already conjuring a spout of water in her offhand. She shaped it into a mace and smashed it down on her adversary's last known position, swamping the dunes with water they'd not seen since their inception. A startled guffaw from below told her she'd managed to hit him that time. She was, by all accounts, still afraid. Very much so. Afraid of losing, afraid of suffering a dishonorable defeat. Afraid of so many things. And yet this fear was different from before. Potent perhaps, but not nearly as suffocating. She was smiling. Grinning, even. Power coursed through her every pore, and although she was still losing and rather badly at that, the gap between the two of them had narrowed. She could feel it. Her second release state had brought her that much closer to reaching the peak. She knew the basics, of course. Within an Arrancar's resurrección, was the power of their soul is shaped into a sword and released to obtain greater powers. One could even say that this skill was nearly identical to a Shinigami's Bankai with a key difference. They were not shackled by the spirit of some sword. This was who they were, and thus they could evolve further. Bankai might not be the limit for the Soul Reapers either, but it was something they must acquire through years of rigorous training, if not centuries. Whereas they, the Hollows, could acquire power explosively through sheer bloody evolution. Naruto snapped into existence behind her and swung for her face. She parried with her sword and drove her heel into his stomach, tearing into his colorful coat to send him skidding backward amidst the dampened sand. She launched herself after him with a smirk, thrusting for his exposed torso. She wasn't some cackling lunatic like Neutra had been, but she found herself enjoying this battle all the same. I want to win. Her sword clashed with his open palm, only for him to grab her blackened blade and yank her toward him. I have to win. In the same instant his free hand swept upward, zero in hand. I need to win. She let him draw her in, locked her legs around his waist as they collided and tackled him to the ground. Their foreheads collided in a jarring headbutt, and while there might have been some mouth-to-mouth contact there for a moment, she was too busy seeing stars to care. Straddling him with her hips, her lips parted as she screamed a fresh Sero Ascuras into existence directly over his face. Naruto laughed and roared back with one of his own. Gold met blue and mingled with black, devastating the area around them in a plume of murky green. They flickered into the air, leaving it between them. Harribel leveled her blackened blade his way. You still won't unseal your sword. Nope. He shook his head. I won't use it. Don't need to. Her brow furrowed. Not even now. Another shake of the head. She clicked her tongue. However. What? There's something I've been meaning to test out. Now seems as good a time as any. Consider it a reward. He lengthened his stance and drew his right hand over his face, fingers curling into a claw. There was something intrinsically alarming about the movement. It set her nerves on edge. Utsi, Uzumaki drawled with dark amusement. Aizen once told me about a little experiment of his from a while back. You wouldn't know about it, of course. It had something to do with a bunch of Shinigami and well, he amended his speech with a laugh. I won't bore you with the grisly details. Long story short, he implanted them with hollow powers. It didn't end well and he eventually lost track of them. I thumped him over the head for pulling a stunt like that. The air grew thick and stifling suddenly, humid even, as though they stood in the maw of some great beast. I know what you're thinking, Naruto sang back at her, grin growing. Uzumaki, you're already hollow. What you're doing has no meaning. It'll be cosmetic only. She stilled, eyes widening ever so slightly. You're correct, and very wrong. Like those poor wizards, I've got a monster inside me, too. He winked at her with his visible eye. Difference being, he's no hollow, and I made peace with him a long time ago. Dying with me changed him a little, too, for the better, thankfully. The air began to shake, shuddering in the grasp of an unseen giant. I'm not a Shinigami, yet I'm not entirely hollow either. I have aspects of both, but belong to neither. Nor am I human. He thumped the hole in his chest with his free hand for good measure. Truth be told, I don't know what I am, and that's fine. It lets me experiment. I even went and asked Aizen for some Kido lessons, ya know. Her brow furrowed. Hollows can't use Kido. Who decided that? His already golden hair sparked suddenly, then began to shift and shimmer like flame while he spoke, as though it were a burning inferno itself. Meanwhile, bone marks on his face began to lengthen and grooved sharper, becoming more feral than before. His teeth didn't sharpen, but his canine denticles suddenly seemed longer now, more akin to fangs meant for biting. It wasn't the sudden, sharp transformation of a resurrection state but something subtler, an improvement all the same. Unbidden, his visible eye gleamed gold, while the other burned a sinister red between the fingers of his right hand. In a way it was similar to Apache's heterochromia but far more frightening. Her eyes were different colors because she'd simply been born that way. Uzumaki's eyes had changed as a result of his altered state of being, birthing a power she didn't wholly understand. Yet he wasn't done. This isn't my release state, but it's something else. Darker, yet brighter, if that makes any sense. Naruto shrugged. I'm not quite sure how to explain it. I don't really have a name for this yet, either. What would I even call it? Gestalt. Super Naruto. Ultimate Hyper Shinobi Mode. He laughed, not at her, but himself. They all sound ridiculous, don't they? I'll figure something out in time. Now. Before her very eyes, he swept that hand away from his face in a shower of blood. Let's go even further beyond. When had he bit his palm? No, he hadn't. He'd literally slashed his face with his clawed fingers. The air thickened. Then, all at once, it happened. As she looked on, that blood congealed over the entirety of Uzumaki's face to form something else. It grew there with those bone fragments on his face, rapidly gaining mass and form until it took on the likeness of a large fox skull, jaws and all, a sinister scarlet lined with touches of black on white. It was not a mask. Not at all. More like a helmet, really, one that completely encased his visage from head to chin, encompassing his hair and jawline alike. Only his altered eyes shone through its darkened depths. Thump 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 went to her heart. Harribel tried to inhale, only to find that she couldn't inhale. The sheer spiritual pressure alone threatened to choke the very life from her until she rallied with her own, and even then she was only barely able to breathe. What was this spiritual pressure? It wasn't solely that of a hollow, or a Shinigami, or even a human, and it certainly didn't belong to some mere Quincy. Then what? What was it? What was he? What? She choked the word out. What did you do? Now, then. Uzumaki's voice, when he spoke, was likewise changed, altered to a low, distorted hum. Say hello, Kurama. Harribel blitzed him in a rush of gold. She never made it. A heel clipped her chin and sent her rocketing into the air, leaving her tumbling end over end like a kite in the wind. Damn it. An open palm pressed into the small of her back, bringing her short-lived flight to a sudden end. Checkmate. He blasted her to the ground. She countered with a sudden rush of water to slow her fall and whipped it his way. Uzumaki tilted his head back, then thrust his face forward and roared through his helm, rendering the subsequent shockwave rendered her attack so much missed. Her eyes bulged in disbelief, but she swiftly marshaled said mist into a sphere of hardened water that she used to enclose herself from him. Too late, she realized her mistake. Yes, she'd wrapped herself in her element, ensuring her safety, but now she couldn't see him coming. Which meant, a Sero tore through her sphere and struck her head on, smashing her into the ground. Through ringing ears, she heard him approach. Through bleary eyes, she watched him unslung his staff from one shoulder. Her throat closed. Was he finally going to show her his release state? You may be strong. Uzumaki paused and lifted his fox-like helmet to smile at her, but brute force isn't always the best approach, either. Observe. The helmet slammed back down onto his face, then he was upon her. It was all she could do to block his staff. Sweat beaded upon her brow as she found herself forced to brave her blade with both hands. Even then she was the one forced back. Was this why he'd refused to use it? Because he was too powerful with it. How broken could you get? Lesson 1. Naruto snarled through his helm, mismatching eyes searing through to her very soul. All it takes is a well-timed counter to turn anything into a mighty weapon. Taking a hand from his staff, he smashed a brutal fist into her gut, winding her, driving her down to her knees with a startled wheeze. Lesson 2. Strike when you catch your opponent off balance. Battles are all about creativity and skill. Catching her by the face, he slammed her into the ground, and held her there. Lesson 3. Always aim for your target's weak spot. His staff smashed down into her skull. Harribel blacked out. Underscore. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. Underscore. How very irritating. Ulquiorra regarded the plume of light in the distance with a scowl. He took too long to finish her. Nalil's giggle was his only warning. He looked back to her, incensed. Why do you laugh, woman? Isn't it obvious? For the first time in forever, her smile held an edge. If he's wrapping things up over there, then shouldn't we do the same? She raised her blade and held it out horizontally across from herself. An ominous pink haze arose from her zanpakuto, reflecting in her steely eyes. She held that stance with intent. As if that weren't warning enough, her spiritual pressure tripled, crashing down on his shoulders in an ocean of raw reality. Declare. His eyes widened as he released her intent. He swiftly raised his blade and pointed it her way in return. Enclosed. Gamuza. Murcielago. The dome of Las Noches burst outward as their blades released, hers a split second ahead of his own. In truth, Ulquiorra scarcely noticed, for his focus was already elsewhere. Black wings slashed across the smoke as he took to the air in search of his prey. Irritated green eyes surveyed the sands, only to find no sign of her. Where was she? Where would she attack from? Where? Movement below. He pivoted a tad too late. How incredibly irritating indeed. Sure enough, Nalil's lance pierced through the haze, struck him between the shoulders, and drilled him toward the ground. Righting himself at the last moment, he whirled and unleashed his most powerful Sero Escuras in her direction. She was too close, too exposed. There was no chance of evasion, much less deflection. He had her. Victory was his. Quote. Question mark exclamation mark quote. Much to his dismay, Nalil opened her mouth and inhaled it. No, she drank his Sero Escuras as though it were naught but liquid, guzzling the black and green light down with ease. What manner of ability was this? He'd never seen the like before. How could someone swallow a Sero? No, wait, she hadn't swallowed at all, which meant Ulquiorra had all of a split second to frown, his eyes widening in alarm. Nalil spat his own attack back at him. Let there be light. He'd been defeated. Ulquiorra realized it the moment he awoke. And what a bittersweet awakening that proved to be. It likely had everything to do with the cloven foot currently pinning his skull to the sand, that and the business end of Gamuz's massive lance resting against his throat besides. Both were ready to pierce the iron skin of his hierro at the slightest provocation. Each was more than capable of ending his life alone. He could survive many things, and recover from a great deal more. Indeed, he was one of the few Arankar capable of rapid regeneration. But having his throat torn out, or his brain pierced, that would even kill him. As such, the Quattro Espada took a moment to heal his injuries. He was still in his release state, which suggested he hadn't been unconscious for all that long, and his organs were intact, but that was where the silver lining ended and his problems began. His right wing was gone, reduced to a blackened nub behind his shoulder. Furthermore, his left eye was missing, smoldering away in the fires of Nalil's counterattack. Likewise, his body was wreathed in burns from tanking such a blast, and it certainly didn't help that he was lacking his limbs. All of them. Someone had taken pangs to deliberately destroy his arms and legs, pulverizing them at the elbows and knees until they were simply smashed off his body. He could see what was left of them lying in a bloodied pile not a yard away, still bleeding. Was it a warning, perhaps? At his peak, it would be a trifling matter to regrow his lost appendages, recover, and go on the attack. Therein lies the problem. He wasn't at his peak. Far from it. He'd unleashed a point-blank Cerro Escuras, only to have it returned to him with double the force. He was very much wounded at the moment, while his opponent remained fresh in her release state, ready to end his life at the slightest provocation. Simply put, he was locked in an untenable position. How very irritating. He shifted ever so slightly, and Nalil reacted instantly, stomping down on his skull to grind his face into the sand. An annoyed grunt was forced from his lips as he endured the indignity. You survived. Her words were soft as ever, but there was undeniably something different about it. That's good, Ulquiorra. I was afraid I'd killed you. Empty words coming from the woman who'd torn off his limbs. She was up to something. He knew it. Why have you maimed me? He asked. What purpose does this serve? Purpose. Her hazel eyes blinked once in confusion. Do you think I'm like Neutra? That I enjoy hurting others? He supposed not. She'd always been soft. Weak. Kill me, then. He sighed. I'm ready to die. The Tres Espada frowned. What? End my life. Now. Nalil tilted her head. Today. She shook her head slowly, sending her long green mane of hair swaying behind her back. No, you're not going to die today, Ulquiorra, you're not going to die for quite a while, if at all. No, you have a purpose to serve. So speaking, she reached down to cup his cheek with her free hand, fingers tracing his burnt face like a mother's caress. Be a good boy and stay still for a moment, I want to show you something. His good eye widened. Be still, she said. What nonsense. He couldn't move even if he wanted to. What was she playing at? Watch closely now, Nalil crooned, her voice the darkest of whispers. And don't tell anyone about this. She didn't give him a chance to ask if that was. Her fingers bit into his cheek and her spiritual pressure spiked without warning, scratching against his skin like a sandstorm. With it her body and the hand stroking his cheek vanished in a pillar of light so bright that he found himself forced to avert his eye lest he go blind. And then suddenly, that light was gone. No, that wasn't quite right. All the light was gone. As though something had swallowed it, drank it in, just as she'd drunk his Cerro Escuras. In that utter absence of light, his eyesight gradually adjusted to this strange new world into which he'd been thrust. Nalil had changed. Her new form, what little of it he could glimpse in the gloom, wasn't just frightening, it went well beyond that. He didn't even have the words to describe it properly. He could only manage a fumbling description at best. It took the most dangerous aspects of her human form and her centaur form and merged them into one while retaining the best qualities of both. Her lance was long gone now, stripped away by her latest transformation, but he still had the distinct feeling of death pressed into his throat. She looked like some sort of bipedal demon, wreathed in shadows, obscuring her true form. Her eyes burned, but the whites of her eyes now stood stained a shadowy black, an inky darkness in which he could see little light beyond her now bright pink irises. When she spoke, her voice was a satiny caress, akin to being draped in a mountain of soft sheets, entangled and slowly smothered from all sides. He could use his second release state as well, but that would mean revealing it to Lord Aizen. Moreover, he suspected that would give Nalil cause to kill him. How did she gain hers anyway? Had she been training with Uzumaki in secret? Or had she always possessed this form? He didn't know. Perhaps in another world she might have been weaker, but this was very much a Nalil who had maintained her peak then surpassed it, ascending to even greater heights, even now threatening to crush him with the sheer weight of her presence alone. Nevertheless, he was able to force out a single word. How? How did I attain this power? Nalil ground a cloven hoof into his throat, preventing him from speaking the question itself. It came to me shortly after I lost Dondochaka and Peshi. Ulquiorra made a confused noise. You don't know their names, I see. Those blank, slitted pink eyes regarded him. I'm not surprised. My fracken was beneath your notice, no doubt. They meant nothing to you. But they meant everything to me. The raw results in the air spiked, stealing the very air from his lungs. Neutra did something to them before he died. I never figured out what, but whatever he did caused them to disappear. She fell silent for a long moment, staring past him, lost in a memory. I don't know where they are now, whether they're dead or alive, if they even still exist. I can't even sense their spiritual pressure. A shadow hand rose to cup her left cheek. For the longest time, I pretended they were still around. I didn't want to admit that they were gone. They were my family. I loved them. Her eyes flashed. And he took them from me. Ulquiorra felt his bones begin to creak beneath the raw weight of her Reitsu. Then he died. Nalil scarcely seemed to notice, lost in memory as she was. I never got my answers from him. How he did it, who he was working with, what the number and location of his allies were. Lord Aizen killed him before I could have my answers. To have something torn away from you like that, can you even comprehend how it feels? Suddenly the shadows peeled away from Nalil for a moment, just a split second, enough to reveal herself and her weapon to him in their entirety. His throat closed. What was this sensation in his chest? Was this fear? He'd never felt like that before. The glimpse was blessedly brief, for the shadows swept back in and her gaze focused on him once more. I awakened to this form in a fit of grief shortly afterward, she explained, regarding him with misty eyes. I've kept it a secret ever since. I won't lose Naruto the way I lost them. Then why show me now? Because I love him and want to protect him. She said it as though it were so simple, like those words explained everything. And so long as you don't have a heart, you're a danger to him. So I thought I'd educate you on what love really is before you went and did something foolish. Love. He scoffed, despite his prone position beneath her. Preposterous. Hollows cannot feel love. Nalil shook her head. Untrue. I love him. I saw him first. He's mine. How naive. Strength attracts strength. You know this, Nalil. You can't possibly hope to keep him to yourself. When Nalil twitched, he saw a chance to torment her. There have already been other contenders for his hand, haven't there? The twitch became a spasm. He noticed. Adversaries, other women he's spoken with, those who've caught his eyes. Nalil didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her silence was enough. Ulquiorra regrew his limbs and struggled to rise. She stomped down, pinning him anew. I don't care. She all but spat the words at him, abandoning all semblance of her composure at long last. I love him. Him and only him. I'll fight anyone who tries to take him away from me. She cupped her other cheek face with her other hand now and smiled down on him, allowing him a glimpse of the madness in her eyes. A mania born from pain and loss alike, long hidden beneath a thin veneer of civility, now rearing its ugly head for him to see. I love him, I love him, I love him so damn much it feels like I might lose my mind sometimes. Here at last her voice peaked, bordering on a laugh as she threw her head back and shouted at the moon. I won't let anyone hurt him. Not ever. I'd rather die. She lowered her arms suddenly, let her head slump, and steadied herself with a deep breath. Earlier, you asked me what it meant to have a heart. Her gaze met his, calm once more, but flecked with silent sorrow. This is what it means. To always guard against losing that which you hold most dear, to slowly go insane trying to keep them safe, so that you might never feel the pain of losing them ever again. You underestimated me and overestimated yourself. It's called pride, Ulquiorra. You possess it. Just as you too have a heart, even if you won't admit it. Why else would you try to torment me? But know this. Quick as can be, she reached down and seized him by the throat. Interfere with me again, and I will kill you. Are we clear? He grunted. Crystal. Good boy. She released his neck and flickered away, leaving him alone with his thoughts. Anger stirred in him. He didn't enjoy losing. How surprising. Ulquiorra stared up at the sky. A heart, you say? Underscore. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. Underscore. Harribel lurched back to life. Or rather, she hadn't been dead at all. After that last blow, it certainly felt like it. She stirred with a start to find herself still very much in her release state, so the blackout must have been brief indeed, but enough to worry her subordinates all the same, because she awoke in the sands to find her faction practically leaning over her with bated breath. Mila rose, Sun, and even Apache looked absolutely stricken with relief at the sight of her. And there behind them, that horrifying bloody bone helmet of his still very much in place, just as before. Naruto raised a hand and waved her way, voice still distorted through his helm. Oh, good, you're awake. Did you sleep well? Harribel raised her head, then paused as she realized something. Where did this pillow come from? Creation of all things, he hummed. It wasn't hard to make. See. As she looked on, he casually pulled reishi from thin air and used it to create another pillow for her viewing pleasure. Apache squawked. What the shit? Tia's gaze bulged in disbelief, though she was proved more silent than her subordinates. Absorbing raw reishi from the environment, then using it to create things. Didn't he realize what he was doing? Only Quincy could do that. And yet Naruto was not Quincy. He was undoubtedly hollow. He must be. He had to be. Nothing else made sense. He used all the techniques of an Arankar. Did Lord Aizen know? Was he aware? Surely he was, right. She had to assume that this was all a part of her master's grand plan. Because the alternative meant that Uzumaki somehow possessed all the powers of a hollow, a Shinigami, a human and now a Quincy. What was he? Nalil apparently decided that was the best time to return from her own battle, having resealed her sword some time ago. In one graceful bound she reclaimed her place at Naruto's side, clapping softly. Well done, she teased, patting his shoulder. I knew you'd handle them. Perhaps a modicum of restraint next time, though. Naruto took a slow breath and removed his helm, allowing it to vanish into a red mist. A stray bead of blood dribbled down the corner of his mouth, suggesting there was some price to be paid for conjuring the terrifying visage of his, but he didn't seem bothered. His eyes still burned with energy, while hers were running low. She'd only just achieved that form after all. She had no doubt she'd collapse the moment she resealed her sword. But if Uzumaki still wanted to fight, let's call it here, eh? She released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Tia's face softened a fraction. Agreed. Her gaze flicked down to the sandy ground, alighting upon each of her wounded fractions in turn. You were indeed impressive. I did not expect such power. Naruto stood tall and proud, planted both fists on his hips and thrust his chest forward. I had a good teacher, and a certain tailed beast companion. His grin broadened. Do you have one of those? Because if not, you gotta try hugging one sometime. I still do not understand what a kurama is. Nell giggled softly into one hand. You will someday. Tia smiled faintly. She lifted her right hand to the side of her head, almost in a salute. I admit it. I underestimated you, Naruto Uzumaki. Thank you for showing me. Naruto chuckled, rubbing at his cut lip. All good. I didn't rough you up too badly, did I? She was going to be sore for quite some time, so yes. But she chose to be gracious about it. Lady Harribel, Mila Rose piped up, quietly curious. What is that new form of yours? Naruto chuckled. The three of you can probably achieve something similar with enough training. Mila Rose, Sun, and Apache struggled to sit up, furious but unable to stand. Apache groaned into the damp sand. Please, no more. I've had enough today. Sun laid a hand on her side, and pulled it away with a pained gasp. By the look of her, the girl's ribs were not hurting nearly as bad as Mila's. She looked up, blinking rapidly, and bowed her head slightly to Naruto. I suppose I should thank you for sparing us. Naruto waved away her thanks. Nah, don't mention it. I mean it. We all got a little carried away. I'm sure I'd feel the same if I were in your shoes. After all, if anyone hurt my friend's girls, he cut himself off with a grin at Tia. Even if they weren't my girls, I guess. He used air quotes that almost disappeared in the stale wind. Nalil sighed. Don't mind him. He's an idiot. So. Naruto brought his hands together in a quick clap. That was fun. Then he added, pointing at the trio. You've got a good team there. We'll have to train again sometime. Maybe the three of you against me and Nell, or all four of you, 5, whatever. Or better yet, all at once. His grin became decidedly sunny. That might be fun. Nalil's face turned rosy. Apache and Mila Rose sputtered. Sun's face turned a shade of pink to match her eyes. Harribel herself tensed at his impudence. Did he even realize the double innuendo of what he was suggesting? Probably not, the silly man. We have no such friendly sparring, Naruto, she said quietly, pointing a finger at him, a single water drop of Ryutsu dripping forth from her finger. Your fighting style, your lack of restraint, it's more than unusual amongst a Rancor. It's downright reckless. Naruto shrugged, arms still behind his head. I fight for fun, mostly, he said lightheartedly. Not for titles. But I'll try to be more Rancor-ish, if that makes you happy. He paused. Though I think fighting is fun in any culture. Sun rolled her shoulders stiffly in silent, smoldering disagreement. Mila gawked his way, looking like she wanted to smack him. Apache stuck out her tongue. Idiot. Naruto winked. Who, me? All I want is just to make sure we're cool. I know you're all up in arms about this whole Hueco Mundo chain of command thing, so don't be. I already told you I'm not a part of the rankings. In what world? Mila Rose was the one to voice her frustrations first. You've gotta be the Primera, at least. Nope. Harribel balked, but didn't dare speak. With a strength like his. If he wasn't, then who was? Sun thrust a finger at Nell. Then what about her? I'm Trace Espada. Nalil lifted her chin just so, staring Harribel down intently. For now. Apache flung up her arms in sheer exasperation. Ah, hell no. Ulquiorra is Quattro, by the way. Apache made angry Apache noises. That nihilistic bastard ranks higher than us. He's stronger, too. Are you trying to make me angry? As her faction bickered with Nalil, Tia glanced at Naruto and studied his face. The earnest, foolish grin. The crude but sincere way he spoke about strength and friendship. Perhaps this was what Lord Aizen saw in him. Perhaps she was being manipulated, or just charmed by his superior strength. Regardless, her lips twitched up in the smallest smile. Which begs the question, Nalil hummed suddenly, looking her way with half-lidded intent, what's to be done with this one? Harribel's three fracken shot Nelly furious glares, each a little spike of anger that she subsequently ignored. Naruto just laughed. Now, we're obviously taking her with us. Nell laid a hand on his shoulder, steadying him as he swayed a little in place. I think that's up to her, no. She cast her eyes from the fallen trio up to Tia herself. What do you say? Tia met Nell's keen gaze. Then she looked back at Naruto. Not for the first time, she appraised him, this strange, bright wanderer with the hole in his chest. He's unlike any Arankar I've seen, she admitted at length. Almost godlike. Naruto scoffed immediately. Don't start with that. I'm no god. And yet he'd batted her about like a leaf in the wind. Was that not what a deity did? Behind her, Sun and Apache were finally dragging themselves to their feet, wincing and limping, blood oozing from various cuts. Naruto noted it and frowned. Hold up, he said, turning toward her fracken. Don't just try to get up on your own. I really roughed you up. Here, let me. Tear frowned. Naruto, no. Naruto, yes. Don't tell me what to do. He was already gathering light around his hands as she looked on. What was that? Kido. No, something else. A soothing golden radiance freely flowed forth from his fingers to envelop not only her three followers but herself as well. It was so very warm. After the battle she had, Harribel felt unworthy of it. Naruto, I appreciate the gesture, Tear said gently, but this is unnecessary. They can recover on their own. Perhaps, Nalil supplied, but there's no need to. Mercy among hollows. Such a foreign concept. Come on, don't be shy, Naruto belted out a cheerful laugh. If I don't make sure you're all okay, it's gonna bother me all day. As he spoke, he stepped up to the Apaches and placed a glowing hand upon the younger Arankar's cheek. A warm golden aura seeped into the wound. She yelped as pain turned to soothing warmth. Likewise, Sun's head snapped up in surprise as Naruto shifted his chakra onto her shoulder. In moments, the spit of golden light closed cuts and knit bone. Mila opened one eye as Naruto ran a brisk hand over her forehead, content to sit in stoic silence as he finished his treatment. And then he laid his hands on her. Harribel hissed instinctively as countless pins and needlessly pervaded her body, but the pain was only temporary. In a matter of moments the agonizing ache in her bones abated, replaced by quiet comfort. Replacing one's raw Reitsu was no easy task, but at least now she needn't fear her body giving out on her. His work completed at last, Naruto leaned back. All right, girls, are you all good? Sun sat up straighter, groaning a little but nodding. Apache winced as she flexed her ribs, definitely still sore, but thanks to Naruto not shattered. Mila took a deep breath, got to her feet unsteadily. Her eyes simmered with grudging respect. None of them said a word, perhaps their shame wouldn't allow it, or their pride prickled in defiance. Regardless, they held their tongues. Naruto mistook their silence for appreciation as he dusted off his hands. All set. Great. No need to thank me. Apache winged a pebble off his thick skull. You started this mess in the first place, ya blonde bastard. And I apologized for going overboard. He winked at Tear. Her eyes softened. You truly aren't anything like other warriors here, are you? Not at all. Naruto beamed at the compliment. He glanced at Nell, who was smiling, and bumped her with his hip. Nell told me you'd be awesome, and I got a tad too excited. His voice suddenly dipped a notch, perhaps realizing what she was about to ask of him. If you're gonna tell me to finish you off, don't bother. I don't kill unless I have to. Tear nodded once. The wind tugged at her hair and she suspected the pale moonlight made her look almost ethereal. I believe you. Nalil hummed her approval. He's a bit soft, but he means well. Naruto took a deep breath, then turned back to her with his biggest grin. So, now that they're up, I've got a question. He paused, letting the anticipation simmer. Tear, wanna go another round? Another round. I mean, you're pretty good at grappling and all, and I need to work on that. Grappling. Heat seared through her face. Phrasing. Did he even realize how someone might interpret those words? Naruto poked his own chest with an amused expression. Just for practice, you know. For one heartbeat, Tear's calm composure cracked. Her eyes widened, her mouth fluttered, caught between disbelief and confusion. Finally, she schooled herself back into statuesque silence. The suggestion, or rather the offer, hung in the air like quicksilver. Nell's eyebrows shot up as she hastily pressed a hand to her lips in a vain attempt to stifle the giggle rising in her throat. At first hearing, she thought he meant another fight with Tia, and her heart swelled with pride that he would dare challenge such a formidable espada casually. But then, the expression on Tia's face turned faintly pink at the edges. Surely, that couldn't. Naruto, oblivious, was left leaning forward, elbows on his knees, head tilted in genuine inquiry. Sun and Apache's eyes turned comically round, and their cheeks flushed the same startling blue as their Ryutsu. Mila Rose dropped her head to glare at him. Sun made the first sound. She squeaked. Wah, he's serious. He's asking her. Too. You know. Him. She jabbed a finger at Naruto, then at Tia, back and forth, losing all decorum in her flustered state. Apache was no better off. Wait, hold on. She whispered frantically, all signs of tomboyishness gone, utterly overwhelmed for a moment. Is he really asking what I think he's asking? Naruto blinked in bewilderment. Asking what? You're all Arankar, aren't you? I was wondering if you were up for it. All four of you. On friendlier terms this time. Mila Rose gawped. All four of us. Tia's hands flew to her face. The question seemed completely innocent to Naruto, yet it had shaken her most of all. Mila strode in, seized the baffled blonde by the collar and brought a clenched fist close to his face. You dare disrespect our mistress. Nell cleared her throat loudly. That's not what he meant, you big oaf. Isn't it? Naruto stared, caught between Mila's anger and Tear's gasp. Right, okay, he said quickly, breaking free, stepping back a bit. I think there's been a bit of a miscommunication here. I meant, well, you're all so strong. I figure, why stop at a few separate matches? Wouldn't a free-for-all be for fun? That made it even worse. Tear's eyes snapped to Naruto and belatedly, she realized exactly what he truly meant. His carefree way of speaking, a naive challenge offered with all the subtlety of a freight train. He wasn't talking about that, but rather he wanted to fight her again, because why not? A sudden, comical silence filled the night. Apich, literally flustered, began to stutter. He wants, oh gods, that ninja's nuts. Sun hid her mouth behind a long sleeve. I didn't realize you were such a brute. Mila was breathing hard, angry, her angry snarl turned to an astonished frown. Naruto scratched his head. I mean it as an invitation to duel. I dunno, I got a feeling this could be fun. He added sheepishly, unless y'all wanna make it not fun. Harribel could feel her face burning up. She wasn't sure how to respond to such an offer. On the surface it seemed like a simple request to square off again, and yet she found herself dithering, because in all her years, no one had ever invited her to fight for fun, least of all a madman with barely a shred of fear. Part of her was alarmed, part was intrigued. He's not just a hollow, is he? She thought, scanning him closely. He's something different. Something new. Blast, but he was looking at her. Everyone was, now. She had to say something. Tear stood still a moment longer, somewhat frozen by sheer surprise. Finally, She cleared her throat softly to speak. Uzumaki, Tear said calmly, though her voice trembled a little. You pay no heed to the words you say, don't you? She took a small step forward, a spot of high color in her cheeks as sought to gather herself. Absolutely none at all. Naruto scratched his chin. Yeah, sorry about that, I just like sparring. He took a breath, still grinning, ready to spout another joke, only to stop short as he seemed to realize she was serious about this, maybe even a bit unnerved. I won't pressure you. He waved a hand. You just looked like you weren't satisfied and wanted more. Naruto. Tear's voice was low. By the look on Nell's face, she knew her embarrassment was visible to all, even as she cleared her throat. Please stop talking. His immediate reaction was to apologize, which spoke well of him. Naruto's honest eyes flicked over Tear's flushed face. Hey, sorry if I weirded anyone out, he said softly. My bad. If he sensed their discomfort, he made an awkward effort to backtrack gracefully. I was joking. If you're not up for a little hand-to-hand, no hard feelings. It's all just fun to me. Unbidden, he let his grin return once more, bright and open. Next time, he added quickly, winking, we can do something else. You know, maybe just have some sake or something else. Tia sputtered helplessly. At that, a loud snort came from Nell's direction. The whole group turned to see her covering her mouth, with one hand, the other wrapped around her waist as she bent double, her long green swaying with every giggle. Naruto. She exclaimed, hand to mouth. I'm so sorry about him. Straightening up, she wiped a mirthful tear from the corner of her eye. He meant sparring, not screwing. Much to Tia's chagrin, all heads whipped back toward her and Naruto. She was certain the flush in her face now looked downright crimson. Apache's big eyes had become saucers, Sun-Sun's were still closed, forehead flushed, Mila too speechless to do anything but glare. Naruto's brow shot upright, nearly vanishing into his hairline. Wah no. He protested, flailing his arms. I was talking about a fight. How could, oh no. No, that's not it at all. I mean, sure, you're very pretty and all. Tear pressed a hand to her lips, trying not to laugh. Was he really that clueless? The girls around her exchanged horrified and amused expressions. She kept her mouth covered to hide the traitorous twitch of her lips. It seems there has been a misunderstanding, she said, voice trembling. Uzumaki, I think it would be best if. What if? She considered him for a long moment, pondering the matter. He was not unattractive. She kept staring. And staring. Started a little more, now. Naruto blushed furiously beneath her intent gaze, but to his credit, tried to recover with a dismissive wave of his hand. Let's just call it a misunderstanding and leave it at that. He bowed to her quickly. Sorry. Nalil, seemingly crestfallen that the misunderstanding had come to an end, sighed quietly. Nobody could have meant it like that, Naruto. So speaking, she approached Tear with hands raised in placation. Forgive him. He's one of a kind. Hey, he glowered at her, that sounds suspiciously like an insult. Nell kept smiling in return. What does? He scowled. What you just said. She touched a finger to her lips. What did I just say? It seems to have slipped my mind. Naruto rounded on her with a squawk. Hey. Don't play dumb. Perhaps if you gave me a kiss, I'd remember. Nalil. Harribel watched them banter with quiet consternation. Were these two already an item? Paired up, perhaps. No. Judging by Nalil's body language, it seemed to be something she desired very much, but alas, Uzumaki seemed oblivious to it. And if he wasn't, he was doing a damn good job at deflecting her. Likewise, it was all but impossible to miss the not-so-subtle looks the Espada was sending her way. A pity, then. She'd be forced to fight for Uzumaki, tooth and nail, most likely. So be it. At length, Tia nodded and granted Naruto what she hoped was a warm smile, something she had admittedly little practice with. No harm done, Uzumaki. She placed a gentle hand on his arm, noting how his pulse leapt at the normal contact and the face Nalil made. Yes, no harm at all. Nalil yanked him back to her, bosom pressing into his elbow. We simply must be going. What's the rush? Harribel drew Uzumaki back to her, making her own position abundantly clear. Their eyes met. Sparks flew. And not the good kind. Rivals for life. Naruto cleared his throat and glanced about for an escape, trying to regain his usual composure. You all right over there? He asked, turning back to Mila, Sun, and Apache. You're being awfully quiet. Likely because her faction knew better than to get involved in a bidding war between two Espada. Sun sighed in relief. We are alive, so it's fine, she said, brushing sand out of her hair. Apache sniffed angrily. I'm never getting that face out of my head. Mila just rolled her eyes. Naruto grinned sheepishly. Looks like I won 2 battles and had a heart attack trying to get a third for free, he said, holding up 3 fingers and touching his own chest in mock shock. Good evening for me, I guess. Tia let out a small laugh. It was a rich, soft sound, surprising even her. When was the last time she'd laughed like that? Shaking her head removed her hand from Naruto's arm and stepped back. Yes, quite eventful, she agreed. Then she turned fully to her fracken. Come, she said, nodding, and the 3 on the ground began to gather themselves, stinging muscles and all. Naruto slipped out of Nalil's hold and offered his hand to help Mila up. She stared at it warily, then spat, save it for someone else, Shinobi. He shrugged, and Nell stepped in, using a bit of her own strength to lift Sun back to shaky feet. Apache groaned and pressed a hand against the rubble of sand underfoot. Naruto pivoted on one foot so that the newly upright Arankar would catch the back of his colorful coat for balance. Hold on, there, he declared dramatically. Gotcha. Apache flailed her arms, let go in a huff and dusted off her stained uniform to smack his hands away with a glare. You got nothing. Naruto sighed and for a moment, just a moment, Tia could have sworn she saw a glimmer of anger in his eyes. Whatever it was, it passed. He tugged at his jacket collar thoughtfully. Yeah, anyway, he said loudly, I think that's enough excitement for one night. We should get out of this desert before something else jumps us. Tia turned back to him. Agreed. The girls and I will return to Lord Aizen's stronghold. She gave him another appreciative glance. We will remember your kindness. Among other things. For his part, Naruto saluted playfully. Anytime. You know where to find me if you want another round. He joked, poking her lightly in the shoulder. Apache practically choked on air, thinking he was literally poking Tia as a dare. Sun jerked out of the way. Mila clenched her fists all over again. Tia herself blushed deeper at that. Naruto. She chided softly. Her tone was gentle, but exasperated. For some reason, she simply couldn't stay annoyed with him. Such a strange man he was. The object of her affection scratched the back of his head, looking sheepish. Right, sorry. He straightened, offering her one last lazy salute. Until next time, then. Tia turned toward the distant, still smoldering form of Los Notches on the horizon with a sigh. You have my thanks. We will be in touch, and, he tilted his head. What did she have to lose? Her reputation was already in shambles, her strength shattered. And yet she'd become stronger for it. He'd even apologized for starting the brawl in the first place. Was that not worthy of a reward? Screw it. In a flicker of sonido, she materialized before Uzumaki, grabbed him by the face and smashed her lips to his in a searing kiss. Her fellow blonde froze, but made no effort to push her away, and she took that as her chance to deepen the kiss before drawing away. Remember this moment, she intoned, meeting his gaze with smoldering. Remember me. Her piece said, and averting her eyes when she saw Nell's stunned visage, she vanished in a fresh whirl of sonido with Mila flanking her, Sun limping behind, Apache jumping to keep up. As such, none of them stuck around for the aftermath that followed. And well that they didn't. Naruto clapped a hand to his forehead and swayed on his feet. Well, damn. Nalil made many angry Nalil noises behind him. This means war. Naruto looked back just in time to see his partner draw her sword. Oi, Nell. Just calm down. I will not. Gamuza. Naruto's yelp filled Hawako Muendo. Underscore. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. Underscore. Did you enjoy yourself? Not a word, Aizen. If the Shinigami was feeling smug as he watched him limp back into the foyer, he certainly didn't say anything. Come to think of it, wasn't it strange that his ally was here in the first place? He wants something. Then again, didn't he always? He was in no mood. Why the hell had Nalil thrown a tantrum anyway? He hadn't done anything wrong back there. That was Hallible. Which made him the victim, oi. Even if he had enjoyed the kiss a bit. So, yeah, he'd let Nell smack him around a little in the hopes it would calm her down. And while it had, she'd also stormed off into the human world, leaving him on his lonesome. The girls were confused. Had he upset her somehow? Did she care? Well, obviously she did, but he didn't know if she cared, ya know. A peck on the cheek was one thing, but he had to be sure. He couldn't bear the idea of ruining his friendship with her, not if he was wrong. Kurama sighed. Dolt. He flailed inwardly. What did I do? It's what you didn't do. Make it up to her. And how do I do that? Aizen coughed into a fist, reclaiming his attention. Regardless, you have my thanks for providing valuable data today, then. His ally granted him a wan smile. I'll need to reinforce Las Noches in the future. Naruto paused, if only because he knew that tone. I'm sensing a bit here. Not at all. Aizen adopted a contemplative look. Strength is like happiness, without either, it becomes impossible to look to the future. Of course, he thumbed his own chin, considering that happiness may come in different forms. Some derive happiness from protecting others. Some enjoy trampling others. And still more find happiness simply by fighting. In the end, it does not matter. Taking that hand from his chin, he swept it out toward him. Everything is in the palm of our hand. Wouldn't you agree? So far, yes. But Lady Luck loved her games. Is there a reason you're telling me this? Quite so. His comrade stepped to a nearby curtain leading to an adjoining room and swept it back. I finally found a suitable fracken to serve you. The first of many, I hope. Woo-oh. Naruto balked, recalling Nell's earlier outburst. Now wait just a second. Aizen Sosuke waited for no one. Say hello, Roka. Back went the curtain and he found himself face to face with a rather slim individual bearing shoulder-length black hair and gray eyes. Her mask fragments took on the form of half a skull covering the right half of her face. She wore a long green striped dress with a turtleneck, and black boots. This is Roka Paramia. He indicated the girl with a sweep of his hand and received a silent bow in return. I believe she will be most useful to you in the days to come. Naruto considered the girl with a gimlet eye. Why give this girl to me now? Aizen hummed, pleased by his intelligence. Because there's someone I'd like you to meet. Ideally, it would benefit us both if you took her with you. I understand this particular hollow is more receptive to meeting groups than individuals. Naruto sighed. He knew a plea when he heard one, even if Aizen would never admit it. Fine. I'll play ball. Who am I scouting out this time? Aizen was happy to inform him. He's a recently discovered Arankar who evolved entirely on his own, without assistance from me. Naruto perked up, intrigued despite himself. A newly born Arankar. Interesting. What does he want? Aizen smiled. A friend. You don't talk much, do you? It was with some small amusement that Naruto watched Roka duck her head and wring her hands as she trailed after him over the dunes of Hueco Mundo. For the last 3 hours now, she'd been utterly unable to look him in the eye. Not unwilling, mind you, unable, simply lacking the courage to address him properly. There was an important distinction between the two. One implied that she wanted nothing to do with him, whereas the other meant she was simply shy. He'd dealt with shy people before. Wasn't that hard. You just had to talk to him, ya know. They opened up eventually. Sometimes the shy ones turned out to be the bravest of all. Sometimes they could be pretty damn scary. Why did he find himself thinking of Hinata? Probably not important. His memories of his life and how he died might still be fuzzy in places, but he was fairly certain she hadn't been the one to kill him and Kurama. He would have remembered a traumatizing event like that. Besides, Hinata wasn't an enemy, she was a friend. She was a badass. She'd stood up to a self-proclaimed god and decked him in the schnoz. You didn't get much cooler than that. Hadn't she said something at the time, too? There it was again, the nagging sensation that he'd forgotten something terribly important. Kurama offered the mental equivalent of a shrug. Your guess is as good as mine. Meh. His memories would come back eventually. Clasping both hands behind his head, Naruto found himself talking to his new frackin' regardless. You're not mute, are ya? Because I'm gonna feel like a jerk if you can't speak. Roka peeked up at him through her dark hair. Quote. I can talk. Aha. Progress at last. She was clearly skittish, but not afraid of him. Slowing his stride a bit, he let himself fall back until he was walking beside her across the dews. So, we've got time. What were you up to before my best buddy assigned you to me? The poor girl sputtered in confusion. Best buddy. You're not talking about Lord Aizen, are you? Yup. He grinned, imagining the latter's bemused expression if he heard himself referred to as such. He's my pal. Roka took a moment to process that, her visible eye widening as she came to terms with the revelation he'd just granted her. Naruto let her, knowing that her curiosity would compel her to speak eventually. She simply couldn't contain herself. Sure enough, she didn't disappoint him. Lord Aizen has brought a great many Arankar together. Sure has. She tilted her head. Was that how you came to be under his banner as well? Naruto chuckled ruefully as they skirted around the decaying remains of a slain Ijukas, leaving it to rot. Sneaky little one, trying to find out more about him. Nope. Died and awakened like this. As he spoke, he used creation of all things to casually create a little red cap, which he casually plonked down on Roka's head. I'm a bit of a special case. She accepted the gift and tugged said cap over her eye to hide her gaze from him. If I may ask. He adopted a faux royal tone. You may. Which rank are you? None. She squeaked in confusion. BWUH. I exist outside of the system. He patted her capped head, tousling her dark hair beneath it as he steered her around the corpse of another hollow. Think of me as a mediator, or enforcer. Removing his hand, he held up a finger and watched her dark eye follow it. I'm not a part of the main rankings, I just keep them in check. But with your strength, you could easily be the Primera, or could, he shrugged, but I don't wanna. Alright, I've told you my life story, now it's your turn. Roka withdrew into herself for a moment, clutching the cap he'd given her. She walked beside him in silence for some time, either ignorant or simply uncaring of the dead hollows they encountered on their journey. Naruto, however, took note of them, and their increasing frequency. Most of these were freshly killed. He could sense a powerful presence in the distance. They were getting close to their destination, now. Roka surprised him suddenly by speaking. I was once the fraction for Shazal Aporo. Perhaps you've heard of him. Naruto squinted, then shrugged. Nope. Never met the guy. He's the Octava Espada. 8th, huh? He shrugged again. Then he's weak. Not at all. Roka disagreed loudly, amusing him once more with her vehemence. The upper ranks of the Espada may be the strongest, but the lower ranks are the most vicious by far. There's no end to their cruelty. He supposed she had a point. He'd only ever interacted with the upper crust of the Espada thus far, and while he had seen Grimjow from afar once in passing, he hadn't associated with ranks 7 or lower yet. Supposedly there was also a 10 that served as 0 at full strength. He didn't really understand that. Shouldn't the ranks be numbered from 1 through 9 like normal math? What was the point in having 0 be a number? How confusing. In any case, the rankings were currently very much in flux at the moment, given the deaths of Neutra and more recently, Barragan. Nalil was very proud of being Trace while Ulquiorra claimed Quattro for himself, but that left the placing of newer Arrancar like Harribel and Grimjow very much up in the air. He'd suggested Quinta, that is to say 5th for the latter Arrancar. Such would put him in direct competition with Ulquiorra, yet that left the matter of Harribel uncontested. He touched a hand to his lips, remembering her heated kiss. Really, they needed a proper primera and a segunda, someone to keep the other Espada in line so he didn't have to constantly play mediator between them. That said, he didn't dare suggest Harribel for either position. Nalil was already in a foul mood, but if he pulled a stunt like that without telling her, she'd never forgive him. Maybe place Harribel and see if she could fight her way up the ranks. Provided she was inclined to. Or you could just let those two fight it out amongst themselves. Kurama offered. Whoever wins gets second, loser gets third. He knew who he meant by those two, it was fairly obvious. I dunno, Nell's pretty proud of that tattoo on her back. So you admit to staring at her backside. Gah. So, Roka. He asked apropos of nothing to ward Kurama off as much as his own thoughts. If you serve this Shazal guy, why are you here with me? The slim fraction looked away from him, idly tugging at the collar of her dress. It was Lord Aizen's command. He said Shazal was unworthy of me. Squandering my potential. He wasn't happy about it. Great. He'd never met this Shazal guy and already made an enemy of him. That said, what was so special about Roka? At a glance she looked harmless enough. A newly minted Arrancar, nothing special. Her hollow mask was certainly different from most, but her spiritual pressure was middling at best. Then again, she could be suppressing it for all he knew. It was always the quiet ones. She noticed his sidelong glance and looked down, hiding her face in her hair. My resurrección is rather unique. Lord Aizen himself said it was spectacular. Naruto perked up, bemused by the comparison. Funny you should mention that, so's mine. Her visible eyes widened with curiosity. How so? Oh, the things he could tell her. It would be so easy. But he wouldn't do that just yet. They'd only just begun working together. Wouldn't want to break her, after all. That's a secret. He poked her forehead instead, earning a fresh sputter from her. Right, so you're my subordinate, which makes it my responsibility to look after you and teach you. I take it you're alright with that. My lessons aren't exactly conventional. Roka stopped short. You're going to teach me. Naruto turned back to face her. Of course I am. You're my student now. Why wouldn't I? She averted her gaze. Shazal never taught me anything, he only ever hurt me. Naruto twitched. Is that so? I'll have a word with him about that. Her gaze drifted to his hands. Why are you cracking your knuckles, Lord? No reason. Quote. Roka blinked slowly. I think there's a reason. No, you're imagining things. He forced a smile he didn't completely feel to his face. Likewise had to physically cross his arms to keep himself from cracking his knuckles and imagining driving said knuckles into the face of a certain Espada. Here's your first lesson, listen to your teacher. Now, let's see this spectacular resurrección of yours. After that, we can start working on your Cero and the rest. Her face flushed at his praise as she sketched a quick bow. Understood, sir. Too damn cute. He was unbent enough to pat her head again. Good girl. A sudden surge of spiritual pressure commanded his attention. He smiled, quietly delighted. Seems they've noticed us. Indeed they had. Underscore. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. Underscore. Alone. Always alone. Always, forever, alone. When we remove our masks and regain our reason, we gain unimaginable power along with it. I never asked for that power to be given to me. I never wanted it. Because of that power, all the friends I had around got their souls destroyed, just by being near me. Their remains piled ever higher. Those that were dear to me, and those who weren't as well. It didn't matter who. That's why I chose to be alone instead. That awful loneliness. I continued that way for years, immeasurable, innumerable, until we could bear it no longer. And so I divided my soul into two. What was our original form? Who knows? Maybe it wasn't anything like either of us is now. Ignorance is bliss. I remember that saying from when I was human. The one who split off from me called themselves Lilinet. And I gave myself a name as well. Stark. That lively brat who wears her heart on her sleeve. With her, I could feel that loneliness I'd endured for so long finally begin to slip away at last, but even so it never dissipated completely. Its echoes remained. Even after we divided, those around us continued to erode and eventually fall, which led to more remains. I came to envy the weak. You get to stay with the pack if you're weak. I wanted to be weak. Or if that wasn't possible, at least have a friend who was as strong as we were. As I was. That's the way I always felt. And then he came. He appeared before us one day, stood before us, our backs to our ever-growing pile of bodies, and displayed not a single hint of weakness at all. Beside him stood a girl, a companion, but my eyes were drawn to him. You seem strong. Underscore. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. Underscore. You seem strong. Do I? The blonde Arankar beamed back at him, whiskered cheeks dimpling in a wry grin. I happen to think I'm pretty damn weak. Stark considered the being before him and fought down a scoff. Weak. Him. There was nothing weak about this being. I'm looking for friends. What a coincidence. The ghost of a smile touched his weathered visage. So are we. Are your friends strong as well? He held out his hand. You're welcome to see for yourself. Never before had anybody said those words to him. It surprised him. And yet he was the first thing they'd met that one could truly consider strong. With him, perhaps we could. Lilinet perked up beside him. Hey, Whiskers. The blonde curled a brow down at her, bemused. Whiskers, huh. That certainly seems to be my nickname these days. What's your name? His grin grew, becoming a touch more bemused. Naruto Uzumaki at your service, he gestured to his companion, who bowed politely, and this here's Raka Paramia. Lilinet curled her lip, noting the sweat beading upon the younger Arankar's brow, the strain she endured by standing before them. Your friend looks weak. Naruto hummed and laid a hand on his comrade's shoulder. Is that what you believe? You stupid or something? She clearly can't fight, which means she gonna. Naruto's gaze flashed. Stark saw it and thumped his other half over the head before she could damn them both. Ow. Stark, what the hell? Be quiet for once in your life, Lilinet. Looking to the now frowning Arankar, he steeled himself for retaliation, but much to his surprise, none came, and he was allowed to speak. Sorry about her, he apologized. She likes to run her mouth. Laughter was his reward. Bit of a spitfire, ain't she? You have no idea. Naruto smiled anew. So you're Stark and she's Lilinet, Those are good names. Strong names, why don't you join us? A moment of silence fell between the two of them and Stark took full advantage of it to reassess their mysterious benefactor. There was something odd about his spiritual pressure. It was both that of a hollow, and yet not somehow. Just what are you? I'm a bit unique. The beaming blonde adopted a selfsame smile. I really wish I had a better answer for you, but I don't. And that doesn't bother you. Nope. There's so many things I want to see, techniques I want to master, places I want to go. Unlike everyone else, my potential is limitless. I enjoy putting in hard work. Spending my time learning new skills, enhancing them, customizing them, getting stronger and making new friends along the way. That's the way I want to live. Traveling and meeting lots of different types of people, each of whom have their own ideas and goals, that sort of experience also made me grow. So that's why I'm going to keep moving freely, like I am now. He held out his hand to him. Wouldn't you like to do the same, Stark? Yes. More than anything. He craved comrades. And yet, you want us to join you? Naruto nodded eagerly. Sure do. We'll follow you, but on one condition. Name it. His gaze drifted to Uzumaki's staff. Unseal your sword. Show us your true strength. Prove that you're worthy of leadership. Naruto sighed. Why is everyone asking me to do that? Oi, Roka. His fraction perked up. My lord. Hold your breath. So speaking, Uzumaki unslung his staff from his shoulders, held it out into the air, and turned it like a key in some unseen lock. The air rippled as a sullen chime filled the air, as though somewhere far, far away from here, a great bell had been rung. Whispers of spiritual pressure began to stem from his shoulders, staining the whites of his eyes an eerie, ominous shade of black. He exhaled harshly, expelling a sudden plume of steam. Finally, his eyes rose to meet theirs, face grim as he uttered a single, solitary word. Protect. Red light burst from his stomach and engulfed him. The sky split. The moon itself cracked. Hueseo Muendo screamed. Underscore. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. Underscore. Such spiritual pressure. Ho. Yamamoto creaked an eye open as the air around him shrieked in protest. This fearsome Ryutsu. He'd experienced a glimpse of it briefly some time ago, only for it to vanish just as quickly. Not so now, now it lingered. Even a world away, he could feel it humming in his bones. High above, clouds swept in across the once blue sky, swarming to blot out the sun as a primal force seized the weather by the throat. It was not the element of fire as his Ryujin Jaka, nor that of Hitsugaya's Hiranmara, or even the lashing lightning of Chojiro's fabled Ganryomaru. This was something. New. The floor trembled, wooden boards creaked beneath his feet, and the wind. The wind picked up, rising from a gentle breeze to a sudden squall before becoming an outright shriek in the air just outside his office. Within, the first squad barracks remained untouched, protected by his powerful presence, but beyond that. The old reaper strode to the balcony, idly tutting as his beard began to sway in the breeze. Well, the wind's howling. Looking out amidst his realm, he watched the skies darken as tornadoes began to form, great gray spouts of wind ravaging the surrounding area, causing panic below. And still that powerful spiritual pressure persisted. It was undoubtedly that of a hollow, and a powerful one at that. The power to lay one low with a glance, destroy them by being in their presence, to oppress an opponent completely just by making eye contact. He knew it well indeed. It felt as though the very world of Hueco Muendo itself was challenging the Soul Society. The barest beginnings of a smile touched his weathered visage. Any Urankar with such power was a threat indeed. How nostalgic. It reminded him of another such creature he'd encountered in his youth, one Arturo Platido. But that Urankar and his abilities had been bothersome to deal with, too powerful to kill in a timely manner, and as he'd been unwilling to use his Bankai at the time the wretch was sealed away for the good of all. He'd grown stronger since, and would not make the same mistake twice. That said, he hadn't enjoyed a proper fight since the days of Yawatch. Perhaps he had grown rusty in the absence of his hated foe, indolent in his old age. Mayhaps it was time to revisit his training once more and remind the young'uns why he was their head captain. But until then, Yamamoto tapped his cane, against the ground, eyes creasing in a smile. Come then, if you dare, young hollow. I shall give you a grand pyre. He was Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. And he had never known defeat. Underscore. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. Underscore. Protect. Stark didn't hear the rest of the release command, nor the name that followed. No, rather, he couldn't. Something stopped him from comprehending it. As though static snarled through his ears, like some great beast had roared, drowning the rest of the words out, like he was unworthy of hearing them. He glimpsed Naruto's horrific release for all of an instant before the wind overtook them. His very presence birthed a sandstorm, obscuring the creature he'd become from view, a great hulking figure of shadow and dark light. Could light be dark? Unseen yet for its eyes. Those horrible red eyes. They seared into his very soul. Calm yet furious. Peaceful yet enraged. Destruction incarnate, yet placid as a pond. Lilynette sank to her knees with a whimper. What is that? What the hell is that? Stark didn't have any answers for her. His mind recoiled instinctively from the contradictions as much as the sight. His very psyche hissed and he found himself flinging an arm out to draw Lilynette behind him lest she be crushed beneath the raw, rampaging reality before them. Monster. He was looking at a monster. This guy was some kinda smiling monster. Naruto sealed his sword suddenly, and the sandstorm abated, revealing him once more, but the sight stuck with Stark. It lingered, even as Uzumaki ignored him to help Roka to her feet, patted his fraction on the back, and praised her for enduring his transformation. The sight was utterly at odds with the monster he'd just seen, and yet. Stowing his staff, Naruto held out his hand to him once more. Satisfied. Undoubtedly. He didn't dare cross something like that. And he was strong. Stark laughed hoarsely and accepted it, shaking his hand. All right. We'll join you. It seems you can at least be around us without getting killed. He pitied anyone else who sought to partner with this madman. They were in for a hell of a time. Underscore. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. Underscore. It's not FAAAAIIIIIR. Why did he always have to deal with the crazy ones? Was it a curse of some sort? Or did he simply have spectacularly bad luck? Kazuki Urahara couldn't tell you. In truth, he'd begun to believe it was the latter. Because, you see, there was an Arankar in his shop, currently nursing her 9th can of beer, 3 sheets to the wind, her head pressed against his table as she threw the mother of all tantrums. I want him, I want him, I want him. Her fist slammed down on his poor tea table, threatening to shatter it at any moment. But he's thick as a brick when it comes to romance. All he does is fight. I hate him. Should he tell Retsu about this? He was technically honoring his deal with Unohana. She had commanded him to inform her if Uzumaki blundered his way back into Karakura town. Nalil was not Uzumaki. So, in a sense, he didn't have to let Retsu know now, did he? Then again, wasn't this an excellent chance to get intel on the enemy? He had no way of knowing what they were up to these days. Oh, he knew Aizen was up to something, but not what. Hiriko's former lieutenant was devilishly good at playing the great game, and while he couldn't prove Sosuke was actively moving against Soul Society yet mind you, he knew that bastard was up to something. That something involved the Hogyoku. It had to. While he'd likely crafted his own by now, Kazuki knew that man wouldn't stop until he seized his own. Aizen wasn't a man to stop at half measures. Something was coming. He simply didn't know what, yet. So why not pry a little? It wasn't as though he had anything to lose. So long as he kept that within Rukia, it would destroy itself eventually, with or without Aizen's meddling. Sure, Yoruichi would hang him by his toes if she found out he'd let an Arankar in here, but this was simply too good an opportunity to pass up. There, it's all right. He gently massaged Nalil's back, knowing full well she could turn violent at any moment. Why don't you tell me about it? She hiccuped into the table, slurring her words against the wood. He let her kiss him, the bastard. Stupid blondes and their blonding. Well, that made no sense at all. Still, in for a penny, in for a pound, as the Americans said. And who, might I ask, is her? Nalil warbled and wept. That no good bitch Harribel. She wants his babies. Oh, dear. That sounded like a woman's name. Pressure. A sudden wave of raw Ryutsu slammed down on his shoulders, nearly driving him to a knee. Not this again. Worse, it wasn't from Nalil. Her eyes were just as wide as his, her expression transfixed with shock. He couldn't breathe. As though spurred by that very thought, the vicious spiritual pressure vanished, abruptly leaving him gasping for breath. What on earth? Nalil growled and cracked open another can of beer. No good bastard using his release while I'm not there. That was from Uzumaki. Evidently saying his name was a mistake, for Nalil took a long draught of said can, threw it away, and promptly thunked her head down against the table with a whine. Naruto. The door to Kazuki's shop slammed open before he could inquire further on the matter. Oi, old man, a familiar voice brayed from outside, did you feel that? Any chance you'd be willing to help Rukia and me learn Aikido or, two? Those words trailed off as Kurosaki Ichigo stepped into the room. He stopped short, realizing what he'd just inadvertently blundered into. In the silence that followed, one could have heard a pin drop. Nobody dared move, nor breathe for that matter. It was a standoff, one none dared break. A moment of silence followed. And then, oi! Ichigo saw Nalil and squawked at her, thrusting an indignant finger the Arankar's way. You again. Why are you here? Nell ponderously lifted her head from the table and glared daggers at Ichigo. Strawberry. Urahara edged backwards. Well that he did, too. At this rate. Sure enough, her brow furrowed. It's your fault. Nell launched herself at Ichigo. Chaos ensued. The wind was howling. Hana loathed every moment of it, and yet for all her anger, there was nothing she could do to stop it, she could only stare silently and seethe. As towering tornadoes sundered the seraite from the sky, the winds of which whipped her long hair free from its customary braid as she glared up at the heavens. Whatever this entity was, it was powerful enough to birth such storms in the Soul Society, yet unwilling a single drop of rain. There was no lightning, no crackle of thunder, just pure destructive wind power, roaring at the world. All the while, this suffocating spiritual pressure persisted in defiance of reality. She stood tall in the face of it, but Azane wasn't so fortunate. Her poor lieutenant slumped to her knees at her side, barely able to breathe. Retsu is scarcely noticed. Or rather, she did, but at this moment she simply couldn't bring herself to attend to her subordinate's plight. Her focus was decidedly elsewhere. It was him. That blasted Arankar. Had to be. The one who had ruined her dream. Destroyed her purpose. Her very reason for living. Minazuki trembled in its sheath, not from fear, but fury. How she longed to draw her zanpakuto and lash out. A muscle jumped in her jaw as she ground her teeth. Uzumaki. Was he mocking her? Calling her out? Making a fool of her? Here I am, his roaring reality seemed to rumble at her, taunting her with its presence, a stature beyond words and worlds alike. I'm the one you want. Come get me, if you dare. And then, just when she was sure she had gotten a fixation on his Ryutsu, when she was sure she could track him down to wherever he was hiding and kill him. Gone. It was as though someone had flipped the switch. One moment she could sense him a world away, and then quite suddenly, he was gone. Hana nearly screamed. To be so close, and then denied. There could be no greater insult in this world or the next. She stomped a foot down, shattering the floor. Azane jumped. See Captain. Are you going? Hana stormed away. For another walk. Underscore. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. Underscore. Nell went where? Naruto regarded the viewing orb before him with, well, he wanted to say a chagrined expression and yeah, He felt some concern for the scene unfolding before his eyes, but truth be told, he was doing his best not to laugh at the utter hilarity taking place within the small screen. Ouch. Poor Ichigo. He really did have the worst luck when it came to opponents these days, didn't he? Upon returning to Las Noches with Stark and Lilinet in tow and helping them get settled in, he'd wanted to get some shut-eye, intending to apologize to Nalil come the dawn once she calmed down. Or what passed for dawn here in Hawako Muendo. Regardless, he genuinely thought he'd endured his fair share of excitement today. He was wrong. I'm terribly sorry about this. For the first time since he'd met him, Aizen actually sounded and looked like he was doing his best not to laugh. She appears to be quite drunk, which would explain her current state. Roka squeaked at his side, a crimson flush searing across her face. Naruto, for his part, merely arched an eyebrow. Arankar can get drunk. Apparently so. Aizen seemed entirely too interested in that, as evident by his smile. Did you know most of them can have children as well? Said brow shot into his hair. Why did you feel the need to elaborate on that point? No reason, I merely wished to inform you of the fact. Sure he did. And potatoes grew on trees. Worse now, Kurama was laughing at him. Roka made flustered Roka noises. Naruto frowned. Aizen. His comrade refused to answer however, and together, they turned back to the viewing orb just in time to see Nalil suplex Kurosaki into the ground. Then she started squeezing him. He could hear the poor boy's back crack from here. Naruto winced the wince of every unfortunate man who had ever found themselves caught in a drunken bear hug. Sue, what are the chances she kills him? Admittedly somewhat high. Aizen thumbed his chin, considering the matter further as they watched her fling him up and down like a squeaky toy. She's been playing with him this entire time, but sooner or later. Naruto heaved a sigh. Yeah, he's probably gonna lose an arm at this rate. Would you mind? He really couldn't pawn this off on anyone else, could he? None of the lower ranks would be able to corral her. Grimmjow would absolutely try to pick a fight, to say nothing of Ulquiorra. Halibal. No. Nell was already angry with her. If he sent his fellow blonde, their catfight would wreck Karakura town. Stark had literally just joined them and as such was presently sound asleep, taking a much-needed nap. Aizen could hardly go himself, nor could Jin or Tosin, not only because they didn't want to draw attention to themselves, but because they weren't supposed to be here. Figures. With one last long-suffering sigh, he dragged a hand down his face. Has to be me then, doesn't it? Unfortunately so. I can promise you a reprieve after this, if you'd like. Nah, it's fine. He waved a hand, shouldering his staff as he pivoted away. I'll get this sorted. Some might have found the idea of flitting from one fight to another annoying, exhausting, even. Not him. Truth be told, he reveled in it. There was never a dull moment in this strange second life of his, not once. Hawako Muendo didn't lack for entertainment, nor did the human world. He wondered what the Soul Society was like. Surely he'd have a chance to cause chaos there someday. That said, Aizen's voice cut through his reverie suddenly, prompting him to look back his way. I would advise caution when you retrieve Nalil. Ouch. Look, I know I screwed things up with her, alright. We'll sit down and talk things out. Aizen shook his head. You misunderstand. That wasn't what I meant. Naruto tilted his head, somewhat nonplussed. Then why? Someone may be hunting you. Hunting him. That was new. Sounded like something of a recent development at that. Aizen knew something, didn't he? Then again, he always did, or seemed to. Say what you would about his means and methods, but the man ran a tight ship for the most part. At least he knew about any potential ambushes beforehand, this time. Crossing both arms before his chest, he fixed him with a stern glare. Do we have a name for this person? Aizen's smile grew an inch as his gaze gleamed. I may have an inkling as to their identity. TCH. Shifty bastard, but still his friend. Am I going to like this inkling? Aizen merely hummed. That depends entirely on you. Suffice to say, they are presently stronger than Zaraki Kenpachi. They may prove a moderate challenge for you with the current limitations you've imposed upon yourself. Well. Naruto perked up, unable to contain the glimmer of excitement in his eye. A moderate challenge, Now it wasn't that exciting. Right, so be on my guard, get it? He flicked a glance to his fracken, grinning from ear to ear. You coming along, Roka? His fraction perked up. As you wish. I would advise against it. Aizen interjected before he could finish. If you are indeed ambushed as I believe you will, it may cost the girl her life. Yeah, maybe he had a point there. Naruto Nell could take a beating, but Roka was fragile. He still hadn't seen her release state yet, and he didn't doubt its potency, but it just took one ambush for things to go south, and he was gonna have his hands full wrangling Nell. Maybe you're right. He patted Roka's head, drawing a confused noise from her. She should sit this one out. Thanks for the Kido lessons by the way. Might have to try out a few of those binding spells on Nell. Roka meeped. Aizen arched an eyebrow. The words caught up to him a moment later. Okay. Naruto amended with a flush in his face, not what I meant. I'm just really eager to test out those spells, ya know. I may be out of contact for some time as well, Aizen informed him. We've had scouts on our border. Konami managed to kill one, recently. Naruto frowned. Shinigami. No, I don't believe so, merely rogue souls. He tapped a finger to the table, considering. Judging by their garb and the item the deceased was carrying, I believe they may be Quincy remnants of the last purge. The words drew a blank in his mind. Quincy. Purge. Never heard of him. I see. I forget how little you know of your world, at times. It's rather amusing. For some reason, his comrade sounded deeply amused. I shall tell you about them upon your return. Suffice to say, they are something of a dying breed. However, these Quincy always seem to vanish into shadows whenever our forces get close. Tosin only encountered one by chance, and even then they fought him to the death rather than be taken alive. Damn, now his interest was properly piqued. Have you tried capturing any yourself? Your Zanpakuto would make it easy. A brown brow rose. I'm assuming that's a rhetorical question. I don't have the time. Naruto brought his hands together in a resounding clap. And why not? Aizen still. I beg your pardon. Why not get your hands dirty? Said the blonde, who found himself shrugging his shoulders, bemused by Aizen's surprise. You wouldn't want to get rusty now, would you? Besides, it might be fun. Was that a joke? Ah, come on. Naruto flipped him off. Just give it a try. You might enjoy it. Aizen considered the table for a long, ponderous moment. At length, he chuckled ruefully. Fun isn't something one considers when rebalancing the universe, but I admit, the thought of investigating the unknown does put a smile on my face. Oh, maybe he shouldn't have encouraged them. It was fine, right? Encouraging Aizen to take action on his own. Surely nothing bad would come of this, right? This was Aizen he was talking about. The man had a god complex for a reason. He was just that strong. It would take something downright almighty to make him struggle, let alone use his Bankai. Well, he hedged, choosing not to voice his concerns. Keep an eye out and let me know what you find. Surprisingly, the Shinigami granted him a nod. Rest assured, you'll be the first one I'll go to with this. Naruto grinned in return. Meaning I'm the only one you can trust. Admittedly, yes. Ah, you big softy. Naruto laughed and clapped him on the back. You should try being honest more often. It suits you. Speaking of honesty, still wearing a smile, he slung an arm around the shoulders of his erstwhile ally. You mind punishing Shazal while I'm away? May I ask why? Pivoting, the blonde patted Roka's head. He hurt my student. Aizen looked between them, bemused. I shall see him suitably chastised. And those Quincy scouts. As I said, I'll look into them. You have my word. Naruto offered him his hand. Good hunting, then. The Shinigami reciprocated the gesture. And to you as well. Together, they shook as equals. One last thing. Releasing his hand, Aizen turned back to the table and withdrew a wrapped parcel from beneath it, wrapped in white cloth. As he looked on in quiet consternation, he promptly presented it to him. I have a gift for you. Naruto considered the item with a wary eye. What is it? A gift. I can see that. Please don't open it until you reach the human world. Now he was just curious. Whatever it was long and slender, some might call it thin, even. He adjusted his grip on it and felt something rattle within. His eyes widened. Is this what I think it is? Aizen preened, unable to resist a chance to gloat. Consider it a holiday gift. I spent a great deal of effort to acquire it and make certain it would survive your heavy-handed nature. Roka poked at the wrappings and recoiled with his yelp as she glimpsed something extraordinary. That settled it, then. Naruto laughed a little, positively giddy. First a Fracken, now this. You always get the best gifts. Guess I gotta pick you up something nice while I'm in the human world. Aizen blinked, baffled by his response. You needn't. Naruto happily talked right over him. No, I will. That's what friends do. One good turn deserves another. Pausing, he gave Roka one last headphone and bid her to be good while he was away. He received a bow in return and a request for him to come back safely. Satisfied with the result, he hefted his prize and strode away with a spring in his step, whistling while he walked. Judging by Aizen's tone, Shazel would be lucky to lose an arm. In the meantime, however, he had a strawberry to save. Preferably before Nell broke the boy's back. Underscore. Opening parenthesis closing parenthesis. Underscore. Death to the STRAWBERRYYY. She's loose. Run for your life. Damn it, Urahara. Ichigo yelped and desperately ducked for what felt like the umpteenth time this evening as a tan fist perforated the space his skull had occupied only a moment prior. Even then the sheer shockwave of the attack blasted his hair back and threatened to send him flying. A bead of sweat ran down his brow, only to evaporate alongside a good portion of his ribs as his arch-adversary came about with impossible speed. He never saw her punch him in the gut, but he sure as hell felt it as he doubled over with a pained retch. This was impossible. Utterly impossible. Damn it. Gasping for air, he raised Zangetsu to defend himself, only for her to slap the blade aside and smash a hellish heel directly into his chin, sending him flying. The outcome had never been in question, only the timing. He rocketed across the street, smashed through a building, and wound up in a dumpster, flat on his back. Head reeling, eyes spinning, he gazed up at the starry night sky, unable to move. Zangetsu groaned and laughed in his head all at once as the smell of trash assaulted his senses. What a woman, how does that whiskered bastard even handle her? Ichigo brandished his blade, mustered his strength, grit his teeth as he forced himself upright, tumbling freed of yesterday's refuse. Now is not the time. Isn't it? His other self stared back at him from within the steely surface of his Zanpakuto, golden eyes gleaming as he grinned. Because the way I see it, amateur, she just rocked your world. Ah, but that's where you're wrong, my dear misinformed king. His pale counterpart wagged a finger at him with a saccharine smile. I haven't wanted her to kick. I'm just a sword. Why did his sword spirit have to be so damn mouthy? Ah, don't tell me you'd prefer the old man. His brow furrowed. What old man? A shadow fell over them both. Ichigo. Kurosaki dodged purely out of reflex by flinging himself to the floor, only to realize his mistake a moment later. In his haste to escape another beating from the drunken Urankar, he'd inadvertently left himself wide open to her next assault. She took full advantage, seized him in a ferocious bear hug, and suplexed him headfirst into the street. It wasn't pretty. Ichigo didn't just see stars. He saw the whole universe. His tongue tasted colors. And then the crazy bitch did it again. Calm your tits, woman. He only dimly heard Zangetsu's voice through ringing ears, feet twitching as he lay half buried in the asphalt. He'd been ducking and dodging the drunken well into the evening now, and already, with only a few hits, he was badly damaged. She seemed determined to thrash his hide for reasons he couldn't fathom. Something seized his ankle and pulled him from the earth like a farmer's carrot. In an instant he found himself hanging upside down before Nalil. She squinted at him, cheeks rosy, eyes bleary, the stale scent of beer on her breath as she hiccuped. You're not dead, or ya? Ichigo absolutely twitched. I am not losing to a drunk. I refuse to lose to a drunk. Absolutely not. Blinking through the pain, he grabbed her wrist and slashed upward with Zangetsu. Hiccuping, she swayed on her feet, weaved around the blade, grabbed him by his robes and yanked him forward. Bone met skin as she drove her skull into his. Her mask, more aptly. Again with the headbutts. Another of her painful headbutts. Always with the headbutts. In conclusion, she rang his noggin like a gong. Ichigo crashed into the street, clutching at his aching skull. Why do you keep doing that to me? Nell giggled drunkenly. 'Cause I'm a goat. You're really not. She descended on him once more. Strawberries shouldn't talk. That settled it. This lady was trying to kill him. And she hadn't even drawn her sword yet. He managed a sloppy parry, forcing her fist away before she could punch or otherwise grab him, but at a cost. Shards of metal flew through the air near the base of his blade. Startled, he looked down. His eyes widened. Nell paused, looking just as confused, staring at the broken metal in her hand. Oops. Zangetsu's glee died an ugly death with a yowl of rage. That bitch just chipped me. Lemme at her. I'll wear her head as a hat. Ichigo glowered at his fractured partner. You think you can do better than me? Definitely. Just gimme a minute. I'll smack that smile off her face. It sounded like a bad idea on paper. No, it was a spectacularly bad idea. And yet, what did he have to lose? Ichigo sighed. Against my better judgment, fine. You have 60 seconds. Zangetsu cackled incredulously. Wait, seriously. Only a minute. And not a moment more. Deal. His other self laughed. A wild, demented sound born of madness, pain, and just a little glee. I'll hold you to that. Strength surged through him, momentarily knitting his broken bones back together. His eyes glowed gold as a piece of something shimmered into existence over his right eye. He could still see through it, but felt almost obscured somehow. Like someone had stuck something to his face. What was it? It almost felt like a mask. Or a piece of one, anyway. But that shouldn't be right. It couldn't be. He tried to touch a hand to it only for his fingers to freeze at the last moment, unresponsive. Nope. No touchy, amateur. His lips parted, and to his horror and amazement, Zangetsu spoke through him, twisting his face into a merry grin. 1 minute. We had a deal. It starts the second I step forward. Looking back, that was the moment. The instant he, Kurosaki Ichigo, should have realized he was so much more than a simple Shinigami. All the signs were already there, staring him in the face. But he didn't see them. Or rather, he didn't want to. Refused to. He didn't want to be seen as special. He just wanted to protect what was important to him. In this case, his life, because he couldn't protect a damn thing if he was dead. Hey, now. Don't go fighting me. You agreed to this. He had, hadn't he? Fine. He ceded control, feeling oddly weightless in his own body. Truth be told, he wasn't quite sure how to feel about this, but prepared to see it through to the end nevertheless. That said, I don't see how good you puppeteering my body is gonna make any difference. It was an eerie, disconcerting thing to feel his own face smile without his bidding. Is that a challenge, amateur? Nalil swayed on her feet and stumbled a little before planting a fist on her hip. Who are you talking to? She promptly found herself flipped off for her inquiry. Rather than retort further, or even answer her, Zangetsu began to slowly unwind the wrapped cloth from their cleaver's hilt. He actually began to whistle while he worked, seemingly uncaring of the dazed, drunken Arankar standing only a yard away from them. She could have attacked, should have interrupted them. But she didn't, and in a matter of moments, Zangetsu finished his work. Only then did Ichigo realize his intent. Wrapping that cloth around his wrist, Zangetsu took a hold of it with his free hand. Then, using it as a fulcrum, he began to spin the blade, slowly at first, then with gusto. Wild winds kicked up as he spun it about, a great gale rising now as the cleaver began to burn bright, not with blue light, but an ominous red on black, the color of blood thickened with dark dye. The air thickened with ominous spiritual pressure that both was, and was not his own, a warped and twisted energy threatening to tear away at the very sky itself. And with it, Zangetsu tilted his head back, basking in it. You have no idea how long I've been waiting for this. Something was coming, something powerful, something deadly. Ichigo found himself recoiling from it, not necessarily in horror, but awe as well. Just what the hell are you? Strawberry. Nalil hiccuped as she let the shards of steel fall from her hand. For a moment there, she seemed sober. What did you do? Zangetsu burst forward with a mad cackle, his declaration directed to Nalil and Ichigo alike. Watch and learn. 60 seconds. An entire minute. On the surface, it didn't seem all that long. And maybe it wasn't too much. However, during a fight, a minute may as well be an eternity. Plenty of time to inflict devastating damage. You just had to know where to strike. Zangetsu did, naturally. He was a being of pure instinct after all. That hadn't changed, it never would. He pounced, closing the distance between himself and Nalil in an instant, whipping the sword form of Zangetsu himself, before him like a flail from its cloth. She looked surprised to see it, if only because the king never bothered to use it. Amateur hour. If his partner wielded him like this, he'd at least put up more of a fight. He really was hopeless. Where would he be without him? Oh, wait. He knew the answer. Dead and buried. Ichigo didn't get it, but he would, soon. He let reason and logic bind him. To him, Zangetsu was heavy, so it took longer to swing. He believed he would cut his hand if he removed the cloth wrapped around the blade's hilt, so naturally, he didn't bother. Likewise, it never occurred to him to use the blade as a flail. He didn't have a clever bone in his body, so naturally, he just spammed the same moves over and over again. Because you see, his mind was disgustingly, unfalteringly, human and filled with reason and logic. Why? Logic. You had to cast those things away in a fight. There was only instinct. Nothing else mattered. Yet again, he didn't understand. For just as there was a fine line between life and death, so too was there a line between a king and his horse. Really, he didn't begrudge the old man damn Quincy Powers for trying to protect him, but he was the Zanpakuto here, not the surly shadow, and he wouldn't be giving up that title anytime soon. Cackling, he whipped the cleaver forward as though it were weightless. To him it was, knowing how Nalil would react, drunken as she was. Her first instinct would be to smack it away, slap it aside like an annoying fly. He was counting on it. The very instant she swept an arm out to defend herself, Zangetsu yanked back on his blade, changing its trajectory to smack her upside the back of the head instead. Even then she somehow managed to dodge what should have been a fatal blow. He narrowly missed his chance to mangle her mask. She staggered and he pressed the attack, slashing at her outstretched arm, where it landed directly in his hand. All the while the clock ticked down in his head. Nell stumbled, off balance, and tried to adjust, but it was too late and they both knew it. No matter how strong you were, even an elite needed a moment to secure their footing in a fight. The fact that she managed to put up some semblance of defense at all spoke well to her skills. It still didn't save her. Zangetsu struck at her face and found himself intercepted by her right arm. Not that it stopped him, he shredded through her sleeve in a shower of blood, swept at her legs to keep her off balance, then cut out at her chest, forcing her leap away into the air for safety. The second she did, he flicked his blade back by the cloth and launched it at her like a missile. When she made to slap it aside, he flickered into existence behind her. You're wide open. His blade came crashing down between Nalil's shoulders like a hammer to bloody her back and hurl her into the streets below. A geyser of dust and smoke sprayed upward. 10 seconds. Not bad, not particularly good, but not bad, either. He tapped 2 fingers to his masked eye and grimaced as he felt the quarter mask there begin to crumble away. Kurisaki's bones creaked from the motion. Gotta watch that. Use too much power and he'd break him, use too little and they'd both die. So long as he didn't move, he could effectively put a pause on the timer, but it was such a pain to start and stop in small bursts like this. Really, he ought to train this idiot better. It was those self-imposed shackles of his. He wasn't anywhere near his full potential. Shameful. Simply shameful. Completely, utterly, shameful. Ichigo, you complete amateur. He railed at his partner as he waited for their adversary to emerge. You have so much power and you don't even realize it. In terms of sheer quantity alone, you've got more power than that Arankar down there. He stomped a foot in the air, growling under his breath. Yet you have no idea how to use it. Your lunge is weak. Your fighting has absolutely no finesse. Do I have to teach you everything? Hey! Zangetsu tossed his head and ignored the flustered remark, then cursed himself for the slip. Blast! He'd wasted another second. No time for this. Get out here, Arankar. Shouldering his cleaver, he brayed down into the smoke. I know that's not all you've got. Don't make me come down there. Sure enough, a streak of violet pierced the haze and blasted upward at him with alarming speed. Golden eyes gleamed with maddened mirth. Hoo boy, that was a big Sero. He thought about blocking the damn thing in a dramatic fashion, but thought better of it at the last second. As fun as it might be to Aura farm and style on her, as the kids said these days, he simply didn't have time to play with her, entertaining as it might have been. That said, watch closely now, amateur. He brandished his blade, dark sparks crackling down its length. This is a real Getsuga Tenshou. A single swing of his arm birthed a swell of dark on-red light, one that quickly carved Nalil's roaring Sero in half and kept going with gusto, barreling down to blast the baffled bitch below. The explosion that followed was nothing short of devastating, and this time, he heard her grunt in pain. Ha! More points for him. He flickered down to her side, ready to finish her off, only to catch a heel to the chin that sent him spinning into a building. He righted himself immediately in the rubble, spitting mad, timer ticking down in his head. 30 seconds. That said, the Arankar looked better off than he would have thought. Sure, her back was a bloody wreck, as was her arm, yet even as he looked on she began to repeatedly lick the latter yuck, and her wounds there began to close. Slowly but surely, the injury there mended before his very eyes. In no time at all, she was able to move the fingers of that hand once more. The hell? Was there something in her saliva that helped her heal? If so, this was gonna be a pain. My blood tastes awful. Nalil slurred the words, turning her head aside to spit it right back out. You'll pay for that, strawberry. Zangetsu twitched. I ain't a strawberry. She squinted at him. Yes, you are. No, he growled, I ain't a damn strawberries. She finished. This is insufferable. Woman. Flickering out of existence and ignoring Ichigo's confused question as to how in the hells he managed to make him move so quickly, he closed the distance between them and slashed at her throat. She managed to get an arm up again, somehow placing her wrist squarely between her neck and certain death, but the impact sent her soaring into the sky, well past the clouds. 20 seconds. Great. Ichigo growled in his head, you've sent her into orbit. Now what? We wait for her to burn up on re-entry. A harsh sonic boom foretold Nell's imminent return. They had a moment at best. Not quite, amateur. Pay attention. You might learn something. Zangetsu launched himself upright and met her halfway, slamming his sword into her fist. She still hadn't drawn her blade. Idiot. Her overconfidence and drunkenness would be her downfall. Lesson 1. He snarled at his partner as attacked Nell, hammering her guard with a barrage of blows. Concentrate a minimal amount of spiritual pressure on your feet for a burst of speed. Nell lashed out, trying to grab him by the face and crush his skull. He drove a knee into her gut, winding her and giving himself a chance to flicker backward. 10 seconds. Lesson 2. Zangetsu grinned as he skidded back in the air. Once you gain the proper distance from your opponent, speed and strength are unnecessary. Case in point. He swayed aside, diverted Nell's first, grabbed her by the wrist, only for her to do the same to his blade, forcing him to kick her in the head instead and send her hollering into the asphalt below. He dove after her with a snarl, determined to finish things up close and personal this time. 5 seconds. Lesson 3. The world dimmed as he forced all his remaining power into his right arm. Finish them with all your might. No matter the cost. 4. Nell's fist slammed through his torso, piercing his stomach in a shower of blood. His torso twisted as she wrenched her hand in the wound. 3. She winced. Oops. I thought you were stronger than that. 2. Zangetsu grinned and gripped her wrist with his free hand, holding her close. Strong enough. 1. Black light cracked across his blade as his sword swung up, crackling with powerful pressure. Cackling, he brought it crashing down and fired another Getsuga point blank, right in her face. There was no escape. Not this time. Victory was his. Nalil smiled beatifically, her lips parted in a tipsy, silly smile. That was his one and only warning before she opened her mouth and ate his attack, drinking his dark slash as one might a tall glass of water. She is right up. Ate the whole thing in one gulp. She even hiccuped once, giggled, and licked her lips for good measure, the utter harlot. Yummy. Zangetsu coughed blood, still impaled upon her arm. Well, that's not fair at all. Sorry, she hummed, swaying in place, steam rising from her lips. Don't care. Wait, if she could eat energy attacks, did that mean she could? Oh, that was bad. Nell spat in his face. Not his empowered Getsuga Tenshou as he'd feared she might, but something altogether worse. Another violet Sero besides this one even larger than the last came, brimming with his own power, all the strength turned against him and amplified twofold. There was no time to think, react, let alone dodge. His eyes widened in surprise and that was it. His world burst into light as her unexpected counter slammed into him, ripped him off her arm, then mowed him down like yesterday's weeds. He pitched backward as the upper half of his robe evaporated, the dark fabric smoldering away from his chest. He tried to speak, tried to say something, anything, only for his words to smolder away in the blaze. Damn it. Momentum, as they say, is a heartless bitch, and velocity an utter bastard that never knew a mother's love. His burning body shot halfway across Karakura town before he'd even realized what was happening. By the time he did, his tumbling torso had already torn a terrible trench into the street in its wake. With that, 1 minute elapsed, and with it, his strength. Worse, Ichigo was ominously silent. Shit. A heel planted itself on his singed head. I see. You have a hollow in you. But even so, you're still too weak, Ichigo. I'm afraid playtime is over. Just then, he felt an angry pang in his chest that didn't belong to him. The words threatened to crush his partner outright. He didn't even have the strength to support him. After a hit like that, he was already blacking out. Sorry, partner, gotta tag out. Ichigo felt himself resurface, more broken and battered than ever before. With it came the shame of defeat. He had to be more than this. There just had to be more. This couldn't possibly be his limit. Was his fighting style too one-dimensional? All he was doing was swinging his sword around. No substance, no style, no kido, no nothing. He needed to train. He needed to get better. No, be better. Poor Ichigo, Nell sniffled, tipsily mourning his apparent defeat, touching 2 fingers to her lips. They came away wet with saliva. It's a terrible thing to be weak, isn't it? Her hand cupped his cheek. Said hand slid down to his throat. He grit his teeth and tried to bite her. How mean. She whined. I was just trying to. She never had the chance to finish that particular sentence. A portal opened directly behind her, a shimmer of black in the night. An arm and a hand, concealed in colorful cloth dove through, snatched Nell up by the scruff of her neck and yanked her backward as one might a surly kitten with a singular noise of yoink. Hey, now! A familiar voice cried out in dismay, grating his ears as its owner emerged into reality. No strangling the strawberry. We need him alive, remember? Nell flailed in the air, legs kicking, arms pinwheeling to no avail. Go away. I wasn't strangling him. No. Whiskered cheeks dimpled in a wry smile. Sure looked like it to me. Well, I wasn't. And I don't wanna talk to you. This from the drunken Arankar. Go away. Ichigo blinked once. Blinked again. Hard. To be fair, he really did have a good reason for being so baffled. His savior leered down at him, all smiles. Hello, there. Naruto had arrived. So friends, this was episode 3 of this epic crossover adventure. If you enjoyed it and want episode 4 soon, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Also comment down your thoughts. Do you think Naruto's growing power will be enough to stop the ancient threat that is beginning to emerge? I'll see you in the next episode.